Rocket ship go now. Hello, I am Robert Ogilvy, Executive Strategist and EQ Coach. Glad you guys could join me today. So you guys may have heard of one-on-ones before. You might even have done some one-on-ones before. Um, in the milieu of management tactics, coaching tactic. Well, forget coaching for a second. There's all sorts of, I'm sure, things you've seen used, and it's not always clear what the better options are. Uh, so let me try to boil some of this down for you. One-on-ones are amazing, and let me try to explain and lay out exactly why they're so damn useful. But what it comes down to high level is that it lets you customize what they're working on in the operations, their role in relation to operations. It helps accelerate their learning, which you can tell that I'm a big fan of, which is why they're so connected to coaching as well. Um, it's way easier to get someone in a flow state. That actually helps do with the feedback loops of it. And then lastly, in perhaps the most job craftingly clever, it is the perfect way to shift your role from a I gotta firefight and do everything manager to manager as coach, manager as enabler, manager as I'm here to make your job better, not to do the work myself. So it's super clever. It's also super effective. You're getting out of your own way, right? So that people can do their damn work. Okay, so let's actually break these down a bit more. Okay, first and foremost, you know how people hate meetings, big meetings, and rightly so, because they're a waste of time, because this could have been an email, because they don't have a good enough agenda, because there's too many people, and so it's too easy to get into this kind of tyranny of consensus. Like we all need to agree, and we don't even have good processes for that, or most people don't. Most places don't. So first and foremost, just by boiling down the number of people in a meeting, the better, right? So what's like a minimum meeting size? You know, you can't one-on-one meet with yourself, so it's two people, right? So that's the essence of what this is, right? There are good reasons why you would bring a larger group of people together to talk about something, to decide on something. But actually, the more we need to get into something crunchy and technical, or very precise, or have a working meeting, actually one-on-ones are really good for that. But forget even working meeting for a second. One-on-ones are a really good way to help customize what someone should be working on. And you can see that impulse in, so obviously Agile has exploded and, touched every sector now. It's not just IT, right? Most of us work in some kind of Agile iterative burst way, right? And so you could see that the notion of having a daily stand-up meeting isn't that far off from having like a daily one-on-one with someone, right? Or you could tag that along. I guess the difference being in the daily stand-up, you want people to spend less than a minute each, just kind of summarizing what they did, what they're going to do, and what's blocking them, right? You could say ask the same question one-on-one and have a bit more time to dig into the details, and that's also really good too if you need to kind of crack some of these details, right? There's actually some management theories that come straight out of this. So if you've heard of something called LMX, Leader Member Exchange, it's trying to basically frame it as like I can almost set up this kind of flow diagram, this kind of if this then that chart, saying great, if the member does this, here's how you should interact. If the member does that, here's how you should interact. And the reason why is that like sometimes it can be really hard as a manager to know what to do. When you're listening, when you're telling someone what to do, when something is acceptable enough that you should be flexing and accommodating, when you need to be more firm, right? And that's what LMX tries to lay out. The point being, it sees the value of each individual employee needs its own customized tone. I would also say HR at its best really is taken to the nth degree for the sake of organizational effectiveness. This notion that it's like the more you can accommodate people individually, the more you keep them happier and engaged, the more they're going to learn better, the more their output productivity is going to be better, all of that. The first high level point, it allows you to customize operations particular to them and their needs, and that's great. Okay, so secondly, it helps accelerate learning, right? Because remember, if we have an attitude of transformational leadership, our actual job as managers is not just in the moment to productivity wise get the task work done. It's to transform and develop them over time to build up our talent basis, right? To develop the people and the talent, the organizational effectiveness of the organization, right? So the learning is a key piece of that. In fact, actually, if we look at things like the team diagnostic survey, the TDS, the three main output variables they're looking at, yes, your task performance, but also how satisfied and engaged you are, and then lastly, the quality of your group processes, which is a lot of basically how much you can individually and as a group learn and develop and get better over time, right? So like learning you might even say then continuous learning is really just part of how we work. This is also an extension of us actually being intellectual workers, right? This isn't just like we've learned something 2 years ago or 20 years ago and we can just execute. We need ongoing input to keep getting better at what we're doing. That also means that part of your role is this, as manager, is this kind of earthly pipeline to what is and isn't working, and that's actually what allows this individual employee to get better and better, right? That you can give them clear, precise feedback, and I would say in that way, timely feedback. That's what helps them learn. If you're there's a number of things that make learning more effective, but the swifter you can apply it, the better. The more relevant it is to your work, the better. You also want it specific enough. Let me dig into learning loops for a second, right? They have different names depending on what theory you're falling under. You probably heard me use the term OODA loops, which is what observe, orient. So you observe the details, and then you kind of orient to kind of a mental model. Decide, act. Decide has that kind of evaluation. What am I valuing? What's business-wise worth doing? And then eventually act, and then the loop repeats, right? Another one like Lactica would use terms like VCOLs, virtuous cycles of learning, and so for them they would use the terms set, seek, apply, and reflect. Set is the high-level reason you're doing it. Seek is the particular thing or trigger which allows you to notice something, which is then leading to the next step, the apply part of it. There's some action, there's some awareness, there's something being done, and then ultimately you're reflecting upon that, right? And the fact that you can do that iteratively, and I would say with reasonably low cognitive overhead. Sorry, my little baby boy is laughing at me. Laughing at me, bud? You think I'm funny? Yeah, I think you're funny, bud. He loves learning that one. He is a learning machine. He's like, 15 months old? Man, guy can't stop learning. Because you know what? If we're doing learning well, it feels good, right? And so, really, if your employees aren't learning, part of the problem is they don't feel safe. They need psychological safety before they can get to learning orientation. Okay, so this is a third point. If you can customize things to someone's need, if you can match skill and challenge well, that is the preconditions to get into a flow state. One of Bobby's favorite words. And she looked like Pee Wee Herman. Flow state, you said the magic word. Flow state. Flow states, they're the best. They feel amazing. It's about 5 times productivity if you can get into them, but it's also like about 4.5, 5 times learning output. So if you can get that match, skill, and challenge right as a manager for what is going to be within the capacity of someone pushing their limits but not too far beyond, that is the Goldilocks zone where they can work well and learn well. So that is the real magic you're going for. Which then brings me to the last point. Assuming you can do all this well, assuming you've shifted your role and you're setting the behavioral precedent, the interactive relational precedent of how you're relating with others, you've now successfully navigated from you doing the work yourself as an individual star performer, or having to come in and firefight and do whatever, to say actually your job as a manager is to enable others so they can do the work, which is the ultimate job crafting, right? Now, what that also means is that it's not just that you're changing your role, but you're in tune enough with the business needs of the organizations and the various roles, the various tasks that could happen, that actually it allows you to flex over time, because it allows the rest of the three to happen. It allows you to customize what tasks they could work on. It allows you to figure out what things they could be learning, and also to calibrate over time that matched skill and challenge. What is needed for them? What's the next hurdle they're going after? And I would also say, as opposed to just laterally skill to skill to skill, how clusters of skills are coming together, right? Which has more to do with high level impact and ultimately things like noble purpose, right? The EQ end of things. It actually feels amazing when you can actually help others. And remember, humans are pack animals. We have high needs for love and belonging, right? And so we have mirror neurons, particularly because there are these social needs, there are these interconnection and related needs that we can't scratch ourselves. And so straight up, it feels great when you can help someone and they can see you helping them and they're better off and you're better off. Man, it is the jammy jam that keeps giving. Remember, 2/3 of people quit a job because of a bad boss. Don't be one of those 2/3 of bad bosses. Be one of the 1/3 that people say, this boss is amazing and I love coming to work and they make my work fun and awesome. All right. I hope you guys learned something. Again, One-on-ones, they allow you to customize operations, they accelerate learning. If you can match skill and challenge, helps get them in a flow state, and that's the best way to actually shift your role to actually be a people enabler as a manager. All right, I'll see you guys next time.